Hi, this is Paul. Got a comment on a couple of my videos. This person put it on a couple of videos. Why no comment on Ravi Zachariah's death? And the honest answer is, I don't know much about the man. I've read the first few chapters of a book of his, which I very much enjoyed. I thought it was really great. I've heard podcasts where he did some commenting on Jordan Peterson. But other than that, had very little involvement with his ministry, or haven't really known a lot of people who have, except maybe via the YouTube thing. So it wasn't a part of my life. Now, lots of people died. Eddie Haskell, actor who played Eddie Haskell, died. Fred Willard, comic, clown, entertainment guy, he died. Jerry Sloan, basketball player and coach, he died. I didn't talk about any of them either. Way more people died. Didn't talk about any of them. Well, so what? Well, this is going to get into basically the way we work. Now, behind the... Can't believe Paul Vanderklay didn't talk about Ravi Zachariah. Well, somebody in someone's mind, it's not unreasonable. It's completely reasonable. Well, Paul's a Christian. Ravi Zachariah is a Christian. Paul's, someone might argue I'm an evangelist of sorts. Ravi Zachariah was an evangelist. Paul's sort of an apologist. Ravi Zachariah is an apologist. Paul and Ravi are on the same team. They're both Christians. They're both conservative Christians who believe in the resurrection. There's lots of different ways. Now we're very much getting into Vervaeke's stuff about categories and okay, so what essence do Paul and Ravi Zachariah share, and how are they different? And well, why do we clump people together? And in fact, we do it so instinctively. We make associations so naturally. Well, we do because it's a big world, and it's a small me. And last week, Monday and Sunday, I talked about, Saturday, I guess, for the rough draft, I talked about like stories of old and the difference between story and reality. And this is going to come up in my rough draft, which I will record after I finish recording this. The world is big. We create JPEGs of being. We have to. And so, well, Paul and Ravi, let's associate them. And why, if Paul and Ravi are on the same team, why isn't Paul showing loyalty to the team and going forth and, in heroic fashion dealing with, I actually did on Twitter get a little involved in a little conversation about his death, mostly because right away some of the controversy about him came up, and just the tiny little bit of reading I saw on those controversy, I thought it was a small thing, but this one particular reporter thinks it's not a small thing, and off it goes in internet land. But it was kind of interesting to me why someone who, it seemed to me, with a very low resolution picture of him that had a remarkable career, why the dirt kind of comes out even if you're doing a 240 character tweet. It's 280 characters. And that's kind of thought. Guy lived a remarkable life. He was a sinner. And then that got into just all kinds of other things. So, but again, watch what I was doing. I was doing the same thing. I'm playing these associations all over the place. And we can't help it. Because again, big world, small me, I need story. I need narrative. I need tribes. I need groups. That's the only way I can promise I can deal with a world that is so big. We mentally create teams. And these teams have missions and agendas and stories. Now, last week, because I'm sending this out on Monday, I do a little bit of planning. Not a lot. We had that conversation in the Discord, the Friday Discord voice chat this week. How much left brain stuff I'm really putting into this. We'll get to this by the end of the video. But had this conversation about conspiracy theory. And, Brett really wanted to have that conversation with me. And he people see opportunities and threats. And when I have someone like Brett on my channel, when I have someone like Brett on my channel. Brett, wrote a book and came on my channel, and after being on my channel, the book got a bump, and Brett's like, going and talking to Paul helps sell books. Let's talk to Paul some more. And then he reads the comments in the audience, and he discovers that, wow, I did a little bit of comparing between the comments, because Jonathan Pajot posted the same conversation that I did, and so I was just a little curious about, wonder what the culture of the two comment communities on, it's the same video, on my channel and Jonathan's channel, and what those two communities will be. And I even asked the Discord what they thought about that, and it was interesting. And so Brett wanted this conversation about conspiracy theories, and I thought, okay. I like talking to Brett, and often when I talk to Brett, I think good things happen. I learn a lot. I enjoy it, and he's got a lot of information, and he's fun to talk to, and he's fun to listen to. So sure, I'll talk to him. And then he's like, well, he sort of wanted, well, I kind of get the idea that he's going to come on my channel, and Paul is basically a platform, and I can go on Paul's channel and present my ideas and get them out to the world through Paul's channel. Paul's not a very affording platform in that way, because if it's boring, I don't like having my channel be that. I want to have a conversation, and I'm going to have my say in at least 50% of this conversation, generally speaking, sometimes more, sometimes less, but I'm going to want to mix it up. And that conversation really kind of got me thinking a lot about what we call conspiracy theories. And Brett Weinstein, in these conversations with his wife, this live stream 16, people have sent me that conversation, and I watched it, and haven't made a video about it yet, but been thinking about it because he had some interesting things to say, and it sort of really got me thinking about, well, at a certain level, individuals and groups are always conspiring to move their world story through the world in order to achieve the outcomes and desires they want. That's nearly the definition of agency, at least personal agency. And, well, this is going to get a whole lot, the more I thought about it, the more interesting and complex this whole thing got. And I thought, that's part of why I released the conversations. I had all those 3 conversations, Brett and Jonathan and Dr. Jim. I released them all throughout the week, but I had them all the same day, and it was a fun day. Good conversation partners. But boy, what isn't sort of a conspiracy when you think about the world we live in? And in the comments section, Karen, who runs the Meaning Code channel, said, this is like my conversation with Michael. And Karen and Michael have good conversations. They're both sharp, and when they talk, they have a way of just kind of wandering, and because we're all sort of talking about the same thing, and I had the time, so I slid over there and started to listen in on their conversation and thought, oh yeah, this does have a lot to do with this. My relevance realization is clicking now.
12 Rules for Life, on page 170, Jordan Peterson's talking about sacrifice, and it occurred to me that this general idea is something that we've come to get quite a...
Now, before she gets too far into this, again, I'm way too ADHD, I'm way too right-brained. At the end of this video, I'm going to deal with the question that I've gotten 10 people asked me this week. And why this week have 10 people asked me this? Maybe it's just sort of where we've come in the pandemic or so, but everyone this week wants to know, Paul, what are you doing? Where are you taking us? I don't know, but I'm having a lot of fun because I think it is so cool that I have these really smart, committed, capable conversation partners, and they're making videos I want to watch, and I'm making videos they want to watch, and we're having this conversation. That is totally cool, and I'm loving it. But anyway, sorry for the interruption.
Vivid picture of your life. on page 170, Jordan Peterson's talking about sacrifice, and it occurred to me that this general idea is something that we've come to get quite a vivid picture of in recent weeks, just in terms of sacrifice on the parts of a lot of people. Okay. He says, we'll start our analysis with a truism, stark, self-evident, and understated. Sometimes things do not go well.
And that little knowing look Karen gives is just, sometimes things do not go well. Yep.
That seems to have much to do with the terrible nature of the world, with its plagues and famines and tyrannies and betrayals. But here's the rub. Sometimes when things are not going well, it is not the world that is the cause. The cause is instead that which is currently most valued, subjectively and personally. Why? Because the world is revealed to an indeterminate degree through the template of your values. If the world you are seeing is...
Let that sink in. The world is revealed through the template of your values. Again, Jordan Peterson stuff. What he was trying to accomplish with Sam Harris. Sam, there's an a priori filter that has been built into us for a very long time. You don't see the world directly. You see the world through a template of your values. John Vervaeke, relevance realization. I mean, okay, those of you who believe in science, well, there's the science, boys and girls. That's what science tells you about you.
It's not the world you want. It's time to examine your values. It's time to rid yourself of your current presuppositions. It might even be time to sacrifice what you love best so that you can become who you might become.
Think about Abraham sacrificing Isaac.
And that really struck me because it seems like right now, everyone is being asked to sacrifice whatever it is they love best.
They recorded this in April in the middle of the lock. Hopefully April was the middle of the lockdown.
Maybe some people, what they loved best was football or basketball. Let's say basketball going into the playoffs. But they're being asked to sacrifice basketball, whether they're a player or a watcher or an owner, whatever that was. Or some people, what they loved best was their freedom to do whatever they want, whenever they want. But everybody's having to sacrifice that. Some people, what they loved best was their 401k or their, anyway, you get the idea. Everybody's being asked to sacrifice something. And why is that? It's because the world is not matching up with what our expectations of it were. And there's a massive reordering of some kind going on. And so then when you come to maps of meaning on page 256 to 258, I'm just going to read a few sentences out of here. I've tried to pick out the sentences that give the general idea, and I'll try to update a little bit as I go along. Now, he makes a statement here that I don't think is actually completely true, at least not in our nation, but I think he's talking about an ideal situation. All the individuals in a particular nation agree fundamentally about the nature of the unbearable present, the ideal future, and the means to transform one into another.
Okay, that's key. So everyone, implicitly, they have this story in their head. And listen to what she says. She's reading from Jordan Peterson. Listen to what he says again. All of us have in our head, whether we're paying attention to it or not.
All the individuals in a particular nation agree.
And I think it's the agree part that's a little problematic in there, because Michael will suss it out.
fundamentally about the nature of the unbearable present, the ideal future, and the means to transform one into another. So it would be good if all the individuals in the nation agreed what constitutes an unbearable present and what constitutes an ideal future. And up until 2 months ago, our nation was completely torn apart at the seams because there were two movies playing on one screen.
Completely torn apart at the seams. Stressing.
Half the people were saying, this is what an unbearable present looks like. And the other half were saying, no, the opposite of that is what an unbearable present looks like. And, then both of them had a completely different picture of what an ideal future looks like. But right now, everybody agrees about one thing. The unbearable present is the coronavirus. And the ideal future is the day when we can get back to having life with one another and being able to have fellowship with our family members and to be able to see people that aren't being overwhelmed with illness. And
now in late May, they're talking in mid-April, in late May, we can see that, indeed, as we're starting to come out of lockdowns, now suddenly those seams are re-emerging, and you can find little videos of people coughing on each other, spitting on each other, or not wanting to wear a mask, or demanding someone else wears a mask, or so the seams are re-emerging. But when the coronavirus came, all those other things got submerged.
People that aren't financially ruined. We all agree now on what on what that is.
Well, I would say, I don't know, this is my particular opinion or perspective, but I think there actually is a way more agreement than we might suppose in terms of what our, like as he says there, in terms of what we imagine a better future to be and what it looks like and what it's composed of. I think that we might be way, way more aligned on that than anybody imagines. But the problem is we don't really talk about that. It's kind of assumed in certain frames of mode. What we do talk about, everything has become political, and politics is about the means whereby we try to improve things by. It's not at the strategic level, it's more at the tactical level of what do you actually do to get down that path. And I think that's where it's like we've lost the capability to engage the grand narrative. It's all become political, and that part of that's because we've lost religious language. Religious language has been lost to,
and not see. I'd nuance this a little bit. It hasn't been lost. It's been pushed aside. Because remember, last few videos I've been doing about religiosity, and this religiosity has become the thing by which different communities afford or take away status. Okay? And so, in many ways, in terms of the naked public square, religious language has been excluded. Well, what are the unintended consequences of that? Well, now political language comes up, but as Michael is nicely showing, political language and religious language work on different layers and do different things. Again, one of the observations from Sevilla in my conversation with her a while ago, and Jordan Peterson, when he was meeting with the Ayn Rand folks, he made the observation that, with a lot of, when he was working as a clinical psychologist, with a lot of patients, we couldn't get anywhere, we couldn't make progress until we got to the place where we were using religious language. That's really interesting. And it talks about the fact that political and religious languages have different registers. Now, this is really key when we think about, let's say, the agenda of the celebrity atheists. Well, their assertion is that religious language can be gotten away from completely and ought to be banished. That religious language is a type of language that is no longer useful. It's archaic. It stands in the way. We'll all be better off the sooner we get rid of it. And now, and I think Michael is making a really important point that, in fact, if we're going to work together in a healthy way, religious language is going to have to be a part of it. And I think this is part of the reason why, when I was talking to Jonathan Peugeot last week, Jordan Peterson kind of made the IDW work, because via him, it's kind of like Thor in that movie, Jordan Peterson sort of made the connection work so that somehow Ben Shapiro and the Weinstein brothers could be on the same page, and along the side with the Weinstein brothers, Sam Harris, and yes, Sam could go on Ben's show, but it didn't have Jordan. Jordan was sort of the missing element that the kind of chaotic conductor that brought excitement and tension and sparks, and so that's why the Jordan Peterson Sam Harris conversations were really interesting, because and they'd use someone, then it's kind of Brett Weinstein or Douglas Murray became the chaotic conductor, because they're all sort of lined up in terms of where they're at in there. But Michael's observation about religious language, I think, here is really vital and crucial and correct.
Popular discussion it's all become political, and that part of that's because we've lost religious language. Religious language has been lost to popular discussion as a means of understanding ourselves, and even just having a dialogue or conversation. Like these kind of conversations about what's most meaningful, what's most important, almost can't have it. So we have these proxy conversations about what should we do that have underlying them assumptions about a better future, but aren't we can't make them explicit anymore for some reason. I think that's part of what Jordan Peterson does so amazingly well, is that he brings forward into explicit conversation that which was hidden implicitly under all this stuff.
Now, this implicit explicit, we're starting, I think, again to get into the long-running conversation about it's not so much the layers of reality, but the sacramental nature of the physical world. I noted today in a video I was listening to, someone said, well, it doesn't matter. Okay, go back to Vervaeke's lectures. What is matter? Well, matter is the Greek word for wood. Well, matter is the pliable stuff. And now, again, Brett Sockel mentions, notice how the definition of the word substance has shifted. Matter is the Play-Doh that we have before us, but there's something behind it. And again, we haven't lost this completely, because we'll pull up the word spiritual. Oh, what do you mean by that? Well, that's the thing behind it that's moving the Play-Doh. That's the thing behind that takes the matter of wood and makes it into a chair or a table or a spoon or a child's toy. That's the formal cause. So again, I mean, so what Peterson is doing is beginning to, I'm jumping ahead in the video, Peterson is exposing the fact that modernity is running out of steam. And I think Dr. Jim was exactly right when he said, when the celebrity atheists, when the new atheists arose, they arose for a reason. And usually when someone arises like this, it's because they feel their grasp being lost. And the same thing happens, same dynamic in Christian circles. And you might say the rise of the moral majority in the 80s. They arose because the consensus of the Cold War of the 50s had been undermined in the 60s. And so the rise of the religious right. And so understanding the new atheists in that context, well, modernity is slipping away, and the rise of the IDW, especially. And I mean, if there's one thing that sort of holds them together, again, it's modernity slipping away, and if modernity's gone, these are academics noting that, well, wait a minute, we're losing science. Science was, we all thought science was the bottom layer. It isn't. It's just the matter. And something behind the matter is giving it form and shape. We're losing the matter. We've got to rush in and bulk this up. And so part of what Jordan Peterson played was that. But Peterson was playing a lot more things on the way.
And I don't know why. I think part of why it's necessary that it becomes explicit is because that's all we have value for now. If it isn't explicit, we don't have value for it any longer.
And that's peak materialism right there. Oh, it's only the explicit is what's relevant. Oh, you'd better throw away that word spiritual, even in an amusement park, psychedelic meditation type way, that I can be perfectly fine and go on little brain vacations via drugs or meditation. No. That's not, that's like riding the little kiddie ride that's got the, maybe the little play tank so you can go bang, bang, bang with it. No. That's not what the people who developed those practices believed they were doing.
The implicit stuff is we don't have time for. It doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't make an impact anymore. It's still there. It's still doing things.
We see tanks on the kiddie ride, but meditation is for fun. It isn't for kind of thing which shapes the matter.
Still, but it's not. It's nowhere on our hierarchy anymore.
Well, like part of the reason the implicit stuff is not on the hierarchy is that we're so distracted by all of the enticements of technology and all of the enticements of.
This is affluenza. Okay, everything's secure, everything's okay. We've got professionals keeping the water and the lights on, and police and healthcare systems, and this chaotic, anxiety-ridden life thing that most human beings had to go through that also afforded them meaning. Well, that's all flattened out now, so now let's just do psychedelics for fun. Well, let's just go to church with the best praise and worship because, gosh, I love me some church with some praise and worship, and let's get that good-looking podcaster Paul, the light bringer, and he can play his guitar and wear his skinny jeans, and when he's singing those love songs to Jesus, boy, I can just see he really means it, and that's more fun than watching Netflix, but they're the same thing.
What were the enticements of our physical wealth as a nation, and all the opportunities that provided and everything. So very little self-reflection, very little time alone, very little time to ever allow the implicit to bubble up to the surface, which this is changing that as well, because people are having more time alone and having to consider what it is that they really think about things. And
there's only so much Netflix you can watch. Well, there's HBO and there's Amazon and there's Hulu and there's only so much TV you can watch. If you don't believe me, let me tell you about Freddie. All Freddie has is TV. No job, no girlfriend, group home. And the reason he calls me sometimes 8 times a day, it's got nothing to talk. Paul, what's going on? Give me some. I can only watch so much TV, Paul.
And
yeah.
So that's all very interesting as well. Well, so he goes on and he says, the mismatch between what I desired and what actually occurred constitutes evidence that one or more of my assumptions are invalid. But I don't necessarily get the information about which one or at what level.
Now go to the beginning of Jordan Peterson's conversation with Roger Scruton. Again, that's one of these videos that Peterson did that's really a touchstone. It's a landmark. And what they're trying to talk about the transcendent, and Peterson makes the point the transcendent is what you bump into when you realize something's wrong. Okay? And it's very much along the same lines as the passages from 12 Rules and then later from Maps of Meaning that Karen is reading here.
So, you have this what is and what should be, and that plays out on both a national level, our agreement about what is and our agreement about what should be and how to get from one to the other. But it also plays out on an individual level. Each individual has some idea of what is and what should be and how to get from one to the other. And we are sometimes successful in navigating that, and sometimes unsuccessful. When we are successful, it's usually because nothing has come in to change our perspective, or no unintended consequences have come along that have caused us to get off of our path.
Well, specifically, no consequences occurred that we can't explain within our existing framework.
Yes, exactly. So
see, and right there. So a little later, I'm going to talk about this Steven Pinker tweet that got so much attention on the internet, and then Ross Douthat tweets out, yeah, but I'd really like them to explain what they were talking about in this 2004 Slate interview where they saw a ghost or something happened. It's exactly like the beginning of C.S. Lewis's book Miracles. Something happened that you can't explain within your framework. What do you do? Now, if it's a one-off thing and it doesn't seem to matter, you sort of put it over into this box of things in your life that's like, unexplainable, and just push it over there. But what if it intrudes even further?
So when this mismatch comes along, when you can't, there's some anomaly, something comes in place and stumbles you from getting from here to there, it gives you some information. Okay, there's a problem here, but it doesn't always give you the information about what the problem is. And let me just read a little bit more that goes with this, because I think this is very important. The outcome of such a mismatch is application of other patterns of action and associated expectations associated with gathering of new information through active exploration. The further down the hierarchy of assumption that the mismatch occurs, the more stressful the occurrence, and the more fear is disinhibited, and the more motivation there is for denial, but also more necessity for exploration and more necessary reprogramming of behavioral assumption and matching sensory expectation.
In other words, if you just stayed at the Del Coronado in San Diego and you stayed in the right room, and those of you can Google and look that up. You stay in the right room and something happens. It's like, oh, I saw a ghost. That was fun. Or that was scary. Or that was, well, I'm not going to stay there again. But then, I don't know, you play Christmas Carol. A relative or your parent comes to you at night and says, and says something about your life that you can't dismiss. What do you do then? And Peterson notes at one hand, and then Karen's about to give a really tremendous illustration that as a pastor, I'd be proud to give such a fine illustration of an idea like this. But you either sort of start taking apart your life to find out where you went wrong, or you start taking apart your life to find out where that went wrong, and that might be a good thing or a bad thing.
And I thought I can give you a good example here. I'm wearing this knitted scarf. Okay? Now, Megan knit this scarf. Very complicated. Requires a lot of thinking, a lot of focus. and very, very careful work, because if she were to make a small mistake somewhere, the mistake wouldn't show up for rows and rows and rows and rows. But when it did show up,
Now, if you're listening on podcast, I was looking at my analytics, which I don't often look at, and just about as many people listen on, not quite, probably 2/3 is 70% of, I'd have to do the math, but just about, not quite as many, just about as many people listen on podcast as watch on YouTube. That was interesting to me.
it would completely undo the whole design.
So it's a beautiful scarf. It's got an intricate pattern, and it's very lovely. But it's obvious that if the pattern were disrupted, it would take away from its glory.
And all of a sudden, you'd have to look at it and say, wait, the design is wrong. Where did I go wrong? Was it in the previous row, or was it 80 rows before? And there's no way to know without painstakingly going back through it row by row and going back through the instructions and trying to find where you got off the path. Well, for many, many, many decades in our nation, we've been on many different kinds of wrong paths, because we've been seeing all sorts of symptoms of problems, whether it's in our healthcare system or whether it's in our financial system. There's all kinds of problems, but nobody's ever taken the time to unwind it and go back to try to find out where the problem first began.
I don't know that it's nobody's taken the time. It's just that it's very difficult in a nation to grab the consensus to do that.
Because all the political arguments just say, well, let's fix this little piece of it, or let's fix that little piece of it. We'll just take care of the fringes. We won't work at trying to find out what the fundamental problem is. But this coronavirus comes along and it shows us, wait a minute, we've got all these problems. Something is seriously wrong and we don't know where the problem came from. So he goes on to say, and I think this is just so smart, he says, well, there's two things here. One is that a truly unexpected event sequence, like COVID-19, upsets the implicit assumptions upon which the original particular fantasy was predicated. And the consequence of such a violation is the breakdown of expectation and a consequent generation of both fear and hope, followed by exploration. Now, this consequence requires three things. It requires, number one, the paralysis of the old model, which is the United States and every government on earth has said, stop. The old model is paralyzed right now. Mm-hmm. The second thing is a reversion of otherwise stably maintained affects to competition and chaos. I'm not quite sure what he means there, but I do have an idea. And the third is the exploration-guided reconstruction of order. So we've been called to a gigantic stop everywhere in the world, and that's given us time to reverse course and look at where the problems are with competition and chaos within the system. And once we've had time to do that, then it would be possible to begin to move forward with an exploration guided, in other words, step by step, moving into this future, this trying to find our way into the ideal future with exploration guided reconstruction of order. So it's the reversion part that is the most dangerous part of all of this, because to know what the correct answer is almost impossible for any one person to know. Now,
right. We don't seem to have a lot of respect for that.
Yes.
That concept.
Exactly.
That in some sense there isn't a right answer, and that whatever in getting the right answer is less important than the process you use to update your knowledge.
if you watch Vervaeke stuff and you get to the end of 50 hours of awakening from the meaning crisis, that idea that Michael just laid there, John Vervaeke keeps saying, okay, you're all looking at the outcomes. Pay attention to the processing, parasitic processing, opponent processing, all of these processes, because you're uncertain of the, you're uncertain of the near-term telos. So pay attention to the process. The process is important.
So that you whatever path it is you're taking can be improved over time. That's way more important than getting the right answer now. We have this sense of like, you get to the right answer and you have 99.9% certainty that you have it, and then you go. We're in a situation where that's just not, where we're being confronted with the fact that that's not possible. I think it was always true,
Yes.
but we're having a practical manifestation of it,
Yes, exactly.
of the limits of our knowledge right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things that's so interesting about this is that I'm gonna talk about Lex Friedman in a second. You know who he is, the AI guy? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he gave this.
Well, that's interesting too, but I'm only going to play this part. So the process. So pay attention to the process. Okay, just a little review of, so you have the sacrifice, you have the implicit, the explicit, and the political, which is tactical, it's now-ish, and the religious, which is strategic, and it's always-ish, and you have time and the knitting of the scarf, okay? So these are sort of the components here, and Michael ends with, but you got to pay attention to the process. Now, let's get back to this religious word, because if you've been watching my recent videos, did this video on Eric Weinstein and Ryan Holiday, Religiosity is the IDW's final frontier, because religiosity, as Robert Putnam noted in his book from 2010, religiosity is now, in a sense, the tell. All right? And it's the tell for who you're going to size up with. Now, remember where we started here. The world is big, and there's a small me. And so I need JPEGs, I need stories, I need teams, I need missions. Well, religious, so pretty soon we have team religious over here, and we have team non-religious, irreligious over here. And I think what Michael exposes is that team irreligious has a problem, because there's a certain register that religious language has always functioned within and for that is now gone. And they're trying to get there via politics, but politics isn't the right vehicle to get there. And so now you need something in place of religion. And I want to be careful here, because so in terms of, so you've got the IDW, and then you've got the little corner of the internet. And in the little corner of the internet is me and Jonathan Peugeot and Sevilla King and Christopher Mastro Pietro and Guy Sengstock, and that's our little corner of the internet here. And you know, a couple of us are sort of IDW adjacent, but in the little corner of the internet, Jonathan Peugeot and I are basically the ones who say, no, you're not gonna get away from religion. You're gonna have those structures are simply too essential, and the entire project of modernity, which were an attempt to somehow save these, sort of hollowed them out and made them useless. But you're gonna have to go back and be really religious again. And John Vervaeke's counter to that, he's got a strong argument when John says, I'm worried about nostalgia, because they don't work like they worked. And you know, for as much as Jonathan Peugeot and I sort of say we're skeptical about that claim, it's a strong claim. and sort of where I fit in. So like I said before, you kind of had the Weinsteins and Sam Harris. Well, it was really Sam Harris and then the Weinsteins and then Jordan Peterson and then Ben Shapiro in terms of that spectrum. You've got Jonathan Peugeot and John Vervaeke, and I'm kind of in the middle of those two because I'm Protestant. And some might say that the Protestant Reformation caused this, but I would also argue the Protestant Reformation expressed this, and what John is addressing in that moment is what many of you who listen to me tell me. And again, going back to kind of reading the comments of the same conversation on Jonathan's channel and my channel, obviously more Protestants in my world, and I've kind of become a bridge person for people, say, maybe heading to Orthodoxy to not totally lose their Protestant roots. But I'm also kind of a bridge person for people who are Christianity curious but not ready to go there, and they don't believe. And so I'm kind of a transition person there because John Vervaeke has a point. And it's not a point religious people like to deal with. And again, I remain skeptical, but I feel its power. And part of what makes this little corner of the internet so precious is that we're trying to live in no man's land between the religious and the irreligious. And they're shooting back and forth, and there's always still sort of a line, and you can sort of see it between Peugeot and myself and John Vervaeke and some others, and some people kind of hop back and forth over the line. But religiosity is the line, and others will look at John's project and say, oh, no, he's religious. I mean, that he's running morning meditation sessions on YouTube, and so maybe it's Christian religiosity, and so the whole thing gets complex fast. Granted that. But for those who are the hardcore secularists, religiosity has become the patch of burned skin. And I've used this in the past. Emotional burn victims. You can't get, certain things can't get, it's kryptonite. They just pull away. And the Google algorithm, Yuri Harari, that's going to be our new religion, Harari says. The Google algorithm dished up for me a video that seemed totally random, and I've lived enough with the Google algorithm now to notice that when something looks totally random, it probably isn't, because the Google algorithm is not random. Google is trying to dish me up things that, based on who's watching my videos and whose videos I'm liking and subscribing and all of this, that according to their patterns, Paul, you might be interested in Alice Roberts' Morals Without Religion. Oh, well, that sounds kind of like what I... So then I click on it and I start watching it. And here's a woman who, for the first part of the video, what she's basically doing, she's a Brit, she's in the UK. What she's basically doing is complaining that all of the choice schools close to home are religious schools, and I don't know exactly how the British school system works. I'm sure some of you will enlighten me. I saw some of this on an Australian sitcom that was on Netflix that I was watching. It was a good sitcom, and some of these issues were in that sitcom too. Again, this gets back to the Jordan Peterson thing. Once you see it everywhere. Well, is it because it's out there everywhere, or is it my salience, my relevance realization, the Vervaeke language that's making me see it? And she's complaining about the fact that the schools she wants to get her kids into are religious, but they got all that religion in them. And all the religious people are saying, it's a religious school. But she's like, yeah, but it's close to my house. And the same things go on in San Francisco with the Catholic schools. That, they're all woke and progressive and everything. But when it comes to where their kids go to school, you really going to send them? This has been true a long time in New York City area. You're really going to send them to the public school? I'm down at, it's the limousine liberal thing. I'm down with the movement, and I'll vote for, I'll vote party line for the Dems, and even though I really wanted Bernie, and but am I really going to send my kid to public school? The people of color I like in my life all have advanced degrees from the best schools. And, maybe I'll give to the charity where the other people of color are getting stuff from me. But, I've seen this stuff all my life. So, religiosity. So, come on. And so we're going to pass laws in the UK to make sure that the religious people can't, they have to learn evolution, and they, and I know some people that have grown up in, the UK systems, and so as a religious person, part of me is like, really? Really? Well, what about the non-religious school? Well, but they don't have the what? Isn't there a little part of you in there that somewhere deep inside is your consciousness Congress still has a few Anglicans back there? And so here we are. So what is religious? And this is very much so when John Vervaeke talks about a religion that isn't a religion, he's got something in mind. And even Sam Harris, has this app for meditation, and so that's not religious? No, that's not religious. So what is? Well, Christianity and stuff. Oh. But so we can have Buddhism without, yeah, I know. I've seen that, and that's sort of makes it cool. And correction, on my Jonathan Peugeot conversation, they were Hindus who were sacrificing the goat. That's a little easier. But then again, I've known traditional Buddhists here in the States, and Robert Putnam makes an awfully cogent argument, because when I drive down the street and I find the Buddhist church, it's like, Buddhist church? This stuff is a lot slipperier and more subtle and way, way harder to wrangle than our JPEG low-resolution stories and the management of them really afford. So on Twitter, I'm covering up his name. Shoot. Eric Haynes @s me in a tweet. This is what's nice about being low status. Every now and then when Eric or Brett or Eric pick up an @ mention that I do with them on Twitter, it's like, ooh, how can these people with 6-figure Twitter followings read their @s? Come on. I don't want to slide under the radar. Pay no attention to the pastor in Sacramento. Just forget it. He's making comments, but they're 2-hour videos. You're a busy person. Don't listen to the video, for Pete's sake. Leave it alone. Let me stay under the radar. I like it down here. And I had a lot of conversation about that we'll get into a little bit later in this video. But, another must-read article for people who've been following Matt Prof, and we'll get to him a little bit later. Work on the rise of postmodern conservatism and tensions within traditionalism. Would love to hear Paul Vanderklay and Ron Dart eventually dive into these waters. It's a great topic. Ron's usually up for a conversation. Maybe I'll shoot him a message and we'll talk about it, because Ron would be a good conversation partner for that. Because a pattern is developing that I go to different people sort of who I've talked to about different things, partly because of their conversation styles, and some people a little more professorial, and Ron Dart's pretty professorial, and Ron Dart knows a lot of things, so I kind of go to Ron Dart and teach me about this and let me poke around in it, and that's kind of the role that Ron plays in my cast of characters and in certain levels of my conversations on my channel. So there is some thinking behind some of this. There really is. But there's been this little spat going on since the COVID thing hit, and Rusty Reno kind of went off on First Things, and that caused a panic. And Rod Dreher, and there's their own ecosystem over there, and First Things has been an important piece for a lot of people, even some people 10, 15, 20 years ago in the Calvin College camp, who tend to skew more progressive evangelical, or now mainline even. Thinking about some of my old profs at the college, not so much at the seminary. But, First Things is sort of someone on Twitter, I won't mention names too much. If you want to take credit for it in the comment section, go for it. Said, well, there's the intellectual dark web and the intellectual light web. And what do you mean by that? Well, and I guess I get to be in both. Thanks to Rebel Wisdom and their ordination of me in the video of the pastor of the intellectual dark web. But I guess I'm the internet pastor of the intellectual light web. But there's more pastors in that light web. There's like Bishop Barron, and people made their lists of it. It was kind of fun. So what's the light web? Well, the dark web are sort of these, and I think, Eric concocted this, and so I'll give him canonical status in terms of defining that, because these are, and Eric postures himself outside the citadel, and he's kind of the left side populist, not wanting to be elitist and wanting to be an everyman, and that's sort of where Eric's at in there, but it's the dark web. They're under the surface. Well, what's the light web? The light web is really the people who have institutional credentials and are kind of flying the flag of their institutions. I'm a Christian Reformed minister to the degree that the Christian Reformed Church always wants to own me for the work I'm doing here. Some do and some don't. Bishop Barron. Hey, Bishop Barron, frontline dude. He's even on ThinkSpot, which isn't really flourishing yet, if it will at all. And Jonathan Pajot. These are people who are, will say right out the bat, I'm a Christian, I go to church. I'm religious. And I think it's important. And I'm not going to stop. And take away all my status for it, go right ahead. But I'm here, I'm religious, I'm not going anywhere. First Things is a really important place for people that they could have, especially for conservatives. And now Richard John Newhouse founded this. And for those of you who don't know anything about this history, doing a little bit of research on Richard John Newhouse would be, you might find fun. He talked about a lot of these things a generation ago. He died a while ago. But his story is not uncomplicated either, because, of course, the Iraq War, flung out people like Damon Linker and Rod Dreher and a whole group there. But, before there was an IDW or an ILW, there was Richard John Newhouse, who was Lutheran and became Roman Catholic, and interesting guy, powerful thinker, controversial. A lot of what we're doing now has been done before, and First Things was sort of the center of it. And to have Rusty Reno kind of lose his stuff about the COVID virus, whole bunch of people panicking. And that's where Matt McManus came in via Eric Haynes's tweet to me. And I didn't know who Matt McManus was, so hit follow, because those of you who know me on Twitter know I'll follow you just if you have a good tag. That's because, Twitter algorithm that's doing their thing. I don't think it's quite as good as the Google algorithm, but Twitter algorithm's doing its thing, and it's kind of fun to see what it surfaces if I follow a sufficient number of people. But a professor at some university, co-author of Myth and Mayhem, a leftist critique of Jordan Peterson and the rise of postmodern, oh boy, it's back to Peterson. Oh, and it's published by 0 Day Books, and now a bunch of the burn patches on some of your skins just got triggered, and there's going to be some stuff in the comments section, and I like a little rough and tumble sometimes with this kind of thing. It's fun. I'm from New Jersey. It's the way we roll. So, ooh, I'm going to have to look at this because now Ron Dart did mention the book, and I didn't know what he was talking about. Sometimes Ron, he's talking about stuff, and it's like, I just nod my head because it's like, I'm listening. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who this guy is. I haven't looked at the book. But now suddenly, remember, again, back to the beginning, Paul, why didn't you talk about Ravi? Well, it didn't really have any association with him. But now, 0 Day, Myth and Mayhem, Jordan Peterson. These are the anti-Peterson tribes. Oh. Now we're in Jets territory, aren't we? Jets and Sharks, West Side Story, dated, pointing. So do I spend another $10 on a Kindle book? I blow through my book budget pretty fast these days. And I got lots of books I haven't really read. I just start reading them, and then another book, and I'm like the squirrel and thing. Book! Oh! See? It's a disease. I gotta get them all out of my parents' house when my mother dies. It's gonna be a problem. Because it's all paper books. Oh, they're heavy. I can't resist. Let's check out the teaser. This is why I always record with screen capture programs, because I can kind of get out of the box and start playing around in some fun places. And 9 ratings. Oh, I wonder about the ratings. Let's read them. First one, Doug Ryan, 5 stars. That's quite a good review, really. I found I should just help me not buy the book. I'm not sure if that's what Amazon wants. Second, and some of you are like, you clicked helpful for a 5-star review on a book from that tribe? Yeah, I did. Why? Because it was a helpful review. Doesn't mean I'd necessarily agree with it, but it was well written and it was detailed, but that click is given. Don't worry about it. Another 5-star review from Elliot. Oh, Diane, 1-star review. This is a preliminary review. Another 1-star review. I've not read the book in its entirety. A 5-star review by Sad. It's sad the cult got to this so early. Oh, so it's the tribes. It's tribal warfare. And Cool Guy 1-star review. Hard to read each paragraph, unrelated to the one before it or the section. That doesn't sound so good. 5-star review. Patience of Saints. 1-star review. Pathetic. Oh, we're playing tribal warfare now. Well, let's jump in. Oh, look. Jordan Peterson is symptom of what? By Slavoj Zizek. Now, I don't know hardly anything about Slavoj Zizek. I did watch his conversation with Jordan Peterson, and I did enjoy it. I paid money to watch it. Never actually got a chance to watch the one from the money I paid. I had to watch a bootleg, which is funny. But Slavoj Zizek, interesting. I haven't read anything that he's written, so he's a good writer. So let's read some. The Art of Lying with Truth. And if you remember my take on Slavoj Zizek from my video commentary on their conversation, Zizek is, it appears to me, to the degree that I can know him, the ultimate postmodern. He's a chameleon. He's an atheist who loves G.K. Chesterton. He's a Marxist who's really a Hegelian. Does he have a core? Does he have a center? I don't know. Turn my watch off because they're chatting on one of my family message groups. The wide popularity of Jordan Peterson is proof that the liberal conservative silent majority finally found its voice. His advantages over the previous anti-LGBT plus star Milo Yiannopoulos are obvious. Well, not Yiannopoulos was... Here's the thing. If you say Milo Yiannopoulos, well, who will get summoned? Yiannopoulos was witty, fast-talking, full of jokes and sarcasms, and openly gay. He much resembled in many features a representative of the culture he was attacking, which of course made him interesting. Peterson is his opposite. He combines common sense and the appearance of cold scientific argumentation with a bitter rage, perceiving a threat to the liberal basis of our society. Peterson can get ragey. It's part of why some of you really like him. His stance is that enough is enough. I can't stand it anymore. Yeah, that's a Peterson. The cracks in his advocacy of cold facts against politically correct dogmas are easily to discern. And right here, I think we have the problem, because I don't think Zizek sees Peterson clearly. All the way back to my conversation with Dr. Jim. Why did the new atheists arise? Because cracks were appearing in modernity, because the old style materialism that C.S. Lewis, I think, pretty thoroughly addressed in Miracles is coming apart at the seams. And so those who don't want to see it go away, just like how many philosophers and Christian theologians in the last 200 years rise up to try to save it. And, well, the new atheists, I don't think they really contributed much to it, but what they mostly did was just kind of be mockers and debunkers, and we're going to keep this from happening by social pressure. And so now when social pressure arises that is being used to make modernity go away, now they're really upset, and hence the rise of the IDW. But Peterson's not the cold facts man. Peterson is about facts, but he's not a simple modernist. And again, Carl's going to not like what I'm about to say right now, but he's a postmodern classic liberal. Why do I say he's a postmodern classic liberal? Because to some degree, we're all postmodernists now. None of us are naive, because once we've seen Derrida and Foucault, we're no longer virgins. We're no longer naive. Now we're all reconstructed, and that's sort of James K.A. Smith's point. And say, now you can really know Augustine because he did this before. Naivete, innocence is gone. Jordan Peterson isn't just a cold facts guy. No, you're reading him wrong. It's not who he is. The cracks in his advocacy of cold facts, and again, talk to Ron Dart. Ron will set you straight on this. I think Ron's not a warrior in these battles. I mean, that's sort of what some of you don't like about Ron. And Ron, of course, has his location and where he stands in church world, and it'll make some of you happy and it'll make some of you unhappy, but your happiness or unhappiness is your own. Ron is Ron. But Ron will look at this and say, no, don't dismiss Jordan Peterson that way. That's not really who he is. It's not really a fair way to address him. His big image is that of the political leftist conspiracy. After communism failed as an economic system and there was no revolution in the developed West, Marxists, he claims, decided to move to the domain of culture and morality, marking the beginning of the postmodern neo-Marxism. Its goal is to undermine the moral backbone of our societies and thus set in motion the final breakdown of our freedoms. But this kind of easy criticism avoids the difficult question, how could such a weird theory find such a wide echo? A more complex approach is needed. Now, that telling of Peterson and some of his claims is a bit more true than just seeing him as a modernist. So let's get into that a little bit. Jacques Lacan wrote that even if, and this is great writing, I can see why Zizek has a strong following. He's very gifted here, skilled, and that was evident at the conversation with Peterson, and as I mentioned in the commentary there, Peterson Peterson came to a postmodern fight with a revolver made for the First World War. But Peterson had to adjust, and he did. He came because he was going to talk about the Communist Manifesto, and all the Marxists are saying, wait, Communist Manifesto? Oh, you're back in the industrial period. We're long away from that. And they are. Whether they're right or not, there's another question. But Marx, we put up statues of Marx, but nobody really takes Marx seriously anymore. And they're right. So Jacques Lacan wrote that even if a jealous husband claims about his wife that she sleeps around with other men is all true, his jealousy is still a pathological phenomenon. Now, pathological is in italics. And the italics should put up a little flag that we're getting pretty postmodernish fudgy on that word, on pathological, and we might have a conversation about what that word means, because me being, although certainly buffered and impacted by postmodernity, a rather undeconstructed theist, says, I think I have an idea what pathological means, and I don't find his jealousy pathological at all. So what do you mean by that word? Well, he's a good writer. He's going to tell us. His jealousy is still a pathological phenomenon. The pathological element being the husband's need for jealousy as the only way to retain his dignity and identity even. Now we are really postmodern. Now we have really come up, and the jealous husband is sort of floating out there, and he's getting his identity and his being from his jealousy. Now, if I were to sit down with that husband as his pastor, and on one hand, if it was like week 1 and he came into my office and said, my wife's sleeping with another man and I'm buying a gun, I'd say, let's hold off on that gun thing, okay? Now, let's say he confronted her and she said, yeah, you're a jerk and your breath is bad. I'm leaving you. And she leaves him. And he's depressed for a few years, and then he loses some weight and tries to date again. And I say, well, I'm not... Anyway, so 10 years later, and I sit down with him, and I've been sitting down with him for 10 years, and says, my wife cheated on me. Well, now suddenly I'm more in the pathological definition that Zizek is pointing to. And I would say, you know what? There's a reason in the church we talk about forgiveness. And I know it feels like letting her off the hook, but you got to let yourself off the hook. And yeah, she cheated on you, and yeah, she left you, and yeah, she said your breath smelled bad, but you know what? It's time to let it go. So let it go, because you're deriving your identity from the wound. See, so yeah, I can be an undeconstructed theist, but I can speak postmodern. I know what he's talking about. So, on to Peterson. Along the same lines, one could say that even if most of the Nazis' claims about the Jews were true, in other words, that they exploit Germans, that they seduce German girls, etc., which they are not, of course, their anti-Semitism would still be and was a pathological phenomenon, because it represented the true reason why Nazis needed anti-Semitism to sustain their ideological position. I also read a lot of history. And in a sense, what you're doing, number one, those might be some of the political reasons. Remember when we talked about Michael and political language and religious language? Those are the political reasons that Nazis might have trotted out, especially to sort of win support in their broadly Christian nation. But if you actually read what Nazis wrote, There were religious reasons. And he's like, no, they were very anti-religion. They were social Darwinians, and it was against religion. And I'd say, well, now it's time for me to play a little postmodernity with my words, and I will say, no, they're religious. Nazism was a religion. And it might not be the kind of religiosity that everyone is recognizing as the dividing line through the country, but it is the true function of how religious speech functions in the world with us. And all those made up reasons about the Jews weren't really the reason that Nazi philosophy thought they were the problem. Read Timothy Snyder. He lays it all out. There's, I can point to other Nazi scholars who are Christian. I don't want to read any Christian book. Okay, don't read a Christian book. Just read Timothy Snyder. He's plenty secular for you. So what are we saying here about Jordan Peterson? In the Nazi vision, with their society construed as an organic whole of harmonious collaboration, an external intruder is needed to account for division and antagonism. See, here's the thing about these postmodern tools. They're not faithful to anyone. And what I said to Jonathan Peugeot in my conversation with him about like stories of old, I'm not terribly worried about that because his tools are, in many ways, Christian tools. And at some point, the hammer's going to the hammer's going to start talking to him. Kind of like Balaam's ass. The hammer's going to start talking to him and say, you know what? If you really deconstruct us, if you really deconstruct story, you're not going to have anything real to hit anything real with. And that's exactly what's going on here, because I think in some ways, Peterson is exactly where the Nazis fall into here. Let's keep reading. The same holds for now. Today, the anti-immigrant populists deal with the problem of refugees. They approach it in the atmosphere of fear and the incoming struggle against the Islamatization of Europe, and they get caught in a series of obvious absurdities. Here's the issue. It's not merely psychological, and it isn't just the refugees. If Europe and America hadn't been taking in, partly probably to offset their lack of reproductive numbers, hadn't been taking in so many immigrants, just regular old immigrants, they probably would be less allergic about the refugees. And all you need is for someone to come along and say, refugees, immigrants, build a wall. You just poke at that piece of burned skin. And they say, ow! They say, it's the Mexicans, or it's the Africans, or it's the Polish plumber. It's the Jews. That's political language. And as Michael said, it's operating at a certain level. And when you don't have that religious language functioning and you're not taking care of that layer, these are the things that you get. And what they don't understand about Peterson, and again, some of their critiques, I can say, all right, okay. But the main critique against Peterson is that this is all Peterson is. That Peterson is, and now in reading this, I understand the complaint. Peterson is a grifter. Peterson is just, he's basically doing what Trump did about the wall and Mexicans. No, it's not. That's not at all who Peterson is. Peterson is saying, no, it's the religious language that you postmoderns, everything is a bulverism. Search bulverism on Wikipedia and C.S. Lewis. Everything is a bulverism. It's because you hate Mexicans. It's because you hate Jews. And, when I was doing my videos a number of months ago and I was digging into some of the Nazi stuff and working on the Tom Holland stuff, I wanted to know, why did the Nazis hate Jews? Because I'd hear this kind of thing and I'd say, no, that's the political layer. That's not the religious layer. It's got to be something deeper. And so And then when Tom Holland in the Delling-Pod interview said, well, it's because they were ardent environmentalists. And I said, like, what? They're ardent environmentalists? Nazis? Start to dig. And it's like, oh, they had a religion under there. It wasn't Christianity. It was a social Darwinism. And they believed in it. They really believed in it. Like religious people try to really believe in their religion. And, a lot of the political stuff, that's just talk. Peterson knows this dynamic. And everybody has a politics. Everybody has their thing. And yeah, right here, cultural Marxism, bloody postmodern cultural Marxism, identity politics, moral relativism. These are all a lot of the fuel of Jordan Peterson's status rocket. And when he, went off on C16, whoosh, off it went. But you're not reading Peterson correctly. Why can't you? Because like Michael said, all the talk's up here. It's all politics. And I'm saying, no, actually, there's a religion down there. There really is. Now, tomorrow, so this is Monday, and Tuesday I'm going to release my conversation with Gordon Menzies that I did, what to you now is last week. Gordon Menzies says he has this book called Western Fundamentalism. He says, all these people in the weird developed West have their own presuppositions. Democracy, free markets, sexual liberty. And Gordon has his own take on these things. But here's the thing. Secularists are running around up here using political language and saying, the political language isn't working. It isn't working to what? It isn't working to unite the country. It isn't working to create community. It isn't working to alleviate our meaning crisis. It isn't working to address nihilism. It isn't working. I can't just use the political language. I need a language. And so when John Vervaeke comes along with his Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, he spends the first 25 episodes doing philosophy. Why? Because religion and philosophy, pretty close, not identical. Philip Carey, something that I was using a great courses series very early on. So here's philosophy and here's religion, and but why is John Vervaeke talking about all that stuff? And then he goes on to the cognitive science. I mean, that's his project, because John Vervaeke knows inevitable religio. Let's use the Latin. Inevitable religio. The politics up here, as Michael said, it's not working. It's not working. We can't find political harmony because we have a rift on the bottom side. And so when people are reactive to religiosity, yeah, it's a tell. It's a tell. Something else is going on. Who is Jordan B. Peterson? Now, if you've been watching my later videos, we're getting fudgy on the word person. Is Jordan Peterson something that is enclosed in skin with a skeleton and, historic continuity and meat space? Yeah, he's that. That's a lot more than that. He's a rider on a wave. And does that wave have personhood? Is it a principality? See, why are they so anxious about Jordan Peterson? Well, it's not Jordan Peterson had been saying this stuff for a long time. Gosh, it's all on YouTube. And I think Jordan Peterson, often at his best, was those YouTube videos of him in a classroom full of students and going and doing his thing. Tremendous teacher. Why are they anxious about him? Because there's an agency. And if you read between the lines of this book against Peterson, there's an agency. People aren't just skin-wrapped meat space beings. Their anxiety about Peterson is that he's far more than a skin-wrapped organism. And we are too. And one of the things that, I really like about talking to Dr. Jim, well, he's smart, but he's a good conversation partner, but he works with people. And so he's a medical doctor. Well, what do you have to be if you're a medical doctor and you have a practice? Well, it's one thing to say, well, here's all the numbers in your body, and with these probabilities, you have this chance of having a heart attack or a stroke, or he's a cardiologist, so blah, 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 blah. Say that to a person. See, it's kind of like a pastor. Well, yeah, buying that gun because your wife said she's leaving you because you have bad breath and you're a jerk and you're not the man she married 30 years ago. Yeah, that's a bad thing. Is he going to listen? Now, this is the cause of a lot of comments about where we're going to go with this is, what is Paul doing? Now, a lot of people have been asking this over the last couple of years. And the truth is, well, I'll get to that. But Dr. Jim had that question for me too. And the conversation's recorded. You can hear how I answered. But Jim laid down, the celebrity atheists arose because defenders arise when something is threatened. It's the most obvious observation. Why did the celebrity atheists arise? Well, they arose because Islamic terrorists weren't the, I always say this word wrong, weren't the caricature, I can't remember how to say that word. They weren't the caricature of what a religious person is. Well, what's a religious person? It's someone who just grew up there in the Islamic world, and it's the only thing they've known, and they grew up and they lived in this bubble. They're unreconstructed, they're naive, they're illiterate, they're uneducated. Who drove planes into buildings? These were people from the Islamic world who had been westernized. They had our education. They had passports. They had visas. They had jobs. And they didn't deconstruct from Islam. They reconstructed into a certain kind of Islam. Now, and Peterson says this so well, we're not transparent to ourselves. And Michael and Karen were reading from that. We're not transparent to ourselves. Things happen and we find ourselves disrupted and in over our heads, and we get to the end of the scarf and we realize, oh my goodness, the pattern is messed up, but I have hours of work in that thing, and to unravel it would take me all day. So I don't want to do that. You're going to what, throw it away? You can't do that with your life. This is part of the reason Peterson's into transformations, watches conversation at Liberty University with the chaplain there. He's very interested in transformations because, in a sense, transformations come and we unravel our life and we start to try to reconstruct it and put it back together. Well, the celebrity atheist rose because modernity was slipping away, and the IDW arose because, a whole bunch of atheists start to get religion. And when the woke stuff began arising, I, as a religious person watching, said, oh my goodness, I know that. It's religion. No, it's not religion. Okay, we won't use the word, but there's the register of language up here and the register of language down here. And Jordan Peterson came in and started talking on this register in a way that people up here could listen to. And a whole bunch of people said, tell me more. Or shut the hell up. That's why he was powerful. And it's not going away. So I talked to Alistair Roberts, and that's a while ago. I should talk to Alistair again. And I was a little anxious. Jordan Peterson's, I'm a pastor. I work with people. I'm watching the dude. He's headed to a train wreck. You don't work like this. You don't take that status rocket ride. You don't have something like this happen to you where suddenly you're the most important intellectual of your age, and so the rest of the New York Times is going to be shooting at you. You don't do this and it comes without consequences. What if Peterson disappears? And he did. Alistair said, the wave he's riding That ain't going away. The celebrity atheists, they feel it coming. Sam Harris, pay no attention to the religious. Here, do meditation. Here, try psychedelics. You can have all the religiosity stuff and none of the belief. Belief is only 1/4 of Vervaeke's 4 Ps. You're not going to get rid of it, but it's not going anywhere. Remember the rules? There's no human agency above human beings. There's no intentionality apart from human beings. There are no miracles. There's the dogma. You against dogma? You're going to have to be against those too. You want to have an open mind? This wave that Jordan Peterson is riding kind of has attributes of personhood. Is it a person? Well, not like me, but sort of. So what is a person? So after I did the thing on conspiracy thinking, it was like, holy cow, that conversation really changed me. And their comments, the comments were, I know some of the comments I knew were kind of predictable, but I started thinking about it and it's like, here's the thing about being open and trying to be honest. You learn stuff and learning stuff changes you. And so if you have an audience, they're going to try to colonize you. And if your audience is small enough, you don't have all the buffers around like you have to have if you have. Well, I thought the Weinsteins needed it, but apparently they don't. That's some crazy stuff that they read some of their Twitter ats. You know, Sam Harris told Joe Rogan, don't do it. Joe Rogan says he doesn't do it. The Weinsteins do. It's like, whoo. But then Steven Pinker on Twitter. Oh, Steven. Belief in an afterlife is a malignant delusion since it devalues actual lives and discards the action that would make them longer, safer, and happier. Really? You're pulling that out? Things must indeed be desperate because the Washington Post is spooning out conspiracy theories. What's really behind the Republicans wanting a swift reopen? It's a conspiracy. Yeah! Overactive agency detector, perhaps? See, it scales all the way up to purposive creation of the world. That's where it went with Jonathan and I. But yet, Eric Weinstein's great quote, you might have a hard time finding it, but I heard him say it. And it's a great quote because I think it perfectly articulates that side of the debate and what makes theism and such really scary for people. It's better if there is no God because if there is a God, you have to worry about what's on his mind. And if we're in a simulation, maybe I'm just one of those little critters on Age of Empires running around, but this Christian God number 2 says, oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Oh, be careful, little ears, what you hear. For the Father above is looking down in love. But you let Grandpa die? And you made me bald? So this whole week, I've had lots of people saying to me, and why this week? I don't know. Is it because we've gotten to a certain point in the pandemic and we're all catching our breath and I'm making more videos than ever? And so what really are you doing, Paul? I don't know. I'm barely a person. I'm part of a body. Well, where did this language came from? The body of Christ. What on earth does that mean? The Apostle Paul saying you're in Christ. Where did these ideas come from? Why are they so all over the place? Why is Jonathan Peugeot, why does he say in the middle of our video, worship is relevance realization? And I thought, holy cow, it really is. And so we had this conversation on the Discord this morning. I woke up this morning. Am I going to make a video for Monday? I don't know what to make, but something will come up, and I'm running a little late. Still have to do my rough draft, but which of course came out on Saturday, and I'm monkeying with your sense of time. But I'm sort of right-brained here, and I'm just spitting stuff out. And it's sort of on the line. It's, Jeff Quackenbush wanted me to kind of do what Vervaeke did. I don't know if that's in me. And it's not quite how I'm using YouTube. As I said to Dr. Jim, I'm using YouTube as kind of my thinking community. This one brain is a node in the network. And there's a network in the comments section, and there's a network on Twitter, and there's a network on, I don't like the Facebook network very much. There's a network on Facebook, and there's a network in the Discord, and there's a network at the meetup, and the network sometimes sends me emails, and the network, and I'm thinking and you're thinking, and I'm being colonized by you, and you're being colonized by me, and together it's kind of like a person. That's kind of how Madness and Mayhem of Jordan Peterson. He's not just Jordan, he's a node in the network. Of course, there's the real node in the network. Don't think I've forgotten about you. I'm watching Westworld. Node in the network long time ago said, you should watch Westworld. They're dealing with the stuff you're talking about. There are reasons I didn't have HBO, and even though I did have it, I didn't put it on the TV. And then during the pandemic, all right, I'm going to break down. I wanted to watch that McDonald's thing, and it was the nose and the camel, and now I'm watching Westworld, and it's like, oh, yeah, we're talking about what is a person? How do I know that I'm real? What do I mean by real? Persons all the way up. So what am I doing? I'm a node in the network too, and I'm talking to you. And even though I have a consciousness congress in here, together we sort of make a consciousness congress. And those crazy fellas out there at Rebel Wisdom, they want to talk about their distributed consciousness, and Christians, we talk about the body of Christ. And well, how does this relate to the body of Christ? Well, some of us are in the intellectual light web. So we say, I'm a part of the body of Christ. Where are those skin boundaries? One of the things I talked about with Jonathan Peugeot is that all of these boundaries of the denominations that even 60 years ago were very important. You can see that in the John F. Kennedy election. That's changed. And so it's very fluid. It's all over the place. Are you a Christian? Do you believe in God? How does this stuff work? We don't know. But what I can say is, inevitable religio, your practices will create a religion. You will be working from presuppositions. You can't act in the world without them. Peterson is right. Now, whether you agree with his politics or not, these are very complex structures, and they're very diverse. But I'm listening to you, and you're listening to me, and we're working things through. And we're now in the Discord server, they're like, everybody wants to make me more famous. And I think it's because they want to talk to their friends about these ideas, and they haven't watched 1,000 hours of Vanderklay. And so we need a pocket Vanderklay. And I said to Jonathan, well, there's a clip channel. I don't make clips of me because I don't know what's important. I don't know what's colonizable. I just know what's me, and I'm only a node. And so if you wanna use me to colonize your friends and family, you're gonna have to put in some work too. You're gonna maybe make a clip channel, or maybe start a blog, or maybe go on the Discord and find some partners to work on a project. And people are like, well, will you? I'll bless it. I told the Discord, I think key to the Jordan Peterson wave were the clip channels. And I know, Peterson had some consternation sometimes about that, but Adam Friended, he ran a clip channel and one of the more successful ones, and then YouTube demonetized his clip channel. And I think that actually hurt Peterson, because it's one thing if you're colonizing people and they're as fans, they're kind of promoting your stuff. It's another thing if they're even making money from it, because there's even more motivation, and on and on and on and on and on it goes. And the Protestant Reformation went because Martin Luther didn't get money from the books he wrote, but the printer next door is like, give me more, Martin. They're eating it up. And then look at the wood prints that happened during the Reformation and the pamphlets. And Martin Luther writes his 95 Theses in Latin and puts it on the Wittenberg door because he's going to have an academic conversation. And the students say, let's translate it into German. Let's go down to the printer. Let's make some pamphlets. And whoosh, the network went. But if there's one thing that can rival porn on the internet, it's religion. Why? So up here is politics. Down here is religion. And as Jordan said, people get really upset when you start poking them in the axioms. They do. So what am I really doing? I'm doing what I told y'all I was doing when I started this thing. And I said, it can end at any time. I'll shut down I don't live off the Patreon. I'll shut it down at any time. And see, that's the thing. It's like, we're going to send you so much money, you will have to live off the Patreon. I'm not worried. I'm thinking out loud. And I said, now I'm a pastor. What does that mean? It means, what do I want to leave behind me? I want to leave a network of nodes built into a community with some institutional things. One of my early issues with what Jordan was doing was, okay, target the individual. Here's the thing. There's target the community, target the individual, target the institution. They all need targeting. But they all need targeting. And so you're going to have to think institutionally. And that's sort of where Eric comes in, because Eric does think more institutionally, structurally. But he's really still talking politics. And it's like, Eric, no, it's religion. So if you want to send Eric a clip, right there. Eric, you have to understand politics and religion. You have to understand how they come across. You're going to have to deal with your religion allergy. I know since the 1950s, religion got a little overheated. The U.S. church and state got a little bit tight. The atheists have a point. True. But inevitable religio, it's all there. And if you need to talk to someone with a PhD and credentials, talk to John Vervaeke. He'll tell you about it. And he's a non-theist, not an atheist, a non-theist. And Eric is, so some of you who've been kind of going between the discords, not as inflamed by religion. And he goes to synagogue, and so he's got a higher tolerance for it. But he's not doing what Peterson did, because Peterson showed the structure and basically said, if you're not talking on this level, you're not talking to the elephant. And the rider will chatter at you all day long. But it's actions that the elephant understands and pays attention to. And it's at the elephant level that the herd actually works. So what am I doing? Trying to be an elephant whisperer. Trying to be a pastor in the intellectual dark web and the intellectual light web. I'm encouraging people to do what you think you should do. If you need 2 or 3 people together to start a wiki or start a little channel, and that's already happened. Look at the Randos United. Look at Karen's channel that I just played. Look at Mary's channel. In fact, I don't have enough time to watch all of their great content. But every time I do, I always walk away being, I'm going to use religious language, edified. Because they're doing great work. Same with Sevilla. Same with John. And just listen to Christopher Mastro Pietro talk. It's like, oh. Might be a preacher someday, Christopher. I'm warning you. I'm warning you. It's where this goes. It's where this goes. Because the thing is, you start LARPing, and the more you do it, the more you want it to be true, and the more you live inside of it, and the more you say, I don't care about my doubts. I'm going to believe. I'm going to join the church. I'm going to take communion. I'm going to follow the program because thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, and I want to see it now. But I'm willing to wait because I trust. I trust God. That's where this goes. Rat rules and destiny were both right. Peterson put all the steps up to it. Everybody, boop, 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 right in. So what am I doing? I'm not doing anything I haven't said I'm doing. There's no conspiracy. There's not even a plan. I'm just doing what the next thing seems right to do. And John Van Donk comes along and says, let's do a meetup tour. And we do half of a meetup tour until COVID. And Joey comes along and says, let's do a Discord so other people can enjoy the meetups we're doing here. And we do a Discord. And the randos come along and say, let's do a YouTube channel. And Rando's YouTube channel is different from Karen's YouTube channel, is different from Mary's YouTube channel. And I please forgive me if I have not mentioned your YouTube channel, because there's more of you out there. And the advice I always give people is, if it's worthwhile enough for you to do, from what you get out of it, you'll keep doing it. And that was my condition with this channel. If I'm getting enough out of doing these videos, I'll keep doing them. And I have. And talk to Jonathan Pachot. He's like, are you still doing them every day? 6 days you shall make videos. The 7th day you shall rest. Or at least put the video on your church channel. So, yeah, not every week you get 6 of them. But lately there's been a lot. And I understand. And I have to figure out how to get my videos on Spotify because I didn't upload them all into MP3. But I'll figure it out. Because it's fun, and I like it, and it's meaningful, and it's good, and I have great pleasure when I lurk in the Discord, and I watch people text, and I watch friends. I watch people make friends, and I watch them care for each other. And some of you will say, well, if church was like that, I'd join. Church is sometimes like that. Sometimes we need to have a fight in church. Sometimes we need to have an argument. Sometimes we don't get along. Well, this marriage and family's like that too. But so what am I really after? I'm after the same thing I'm always after. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I'll be after that till the day I die, Lord willing. But the thing is, you might not be religious, but I think that's what you're chasing too. Because you might not be real clear on what is good or what is true or what is beautiful, but you want all three, and you don't want to have to pick between them. So, this person's all the way up, baby. Peugeot is right. I agree with him. Now, if I talk to Jacob, Jacob and Sam have problems with the Trinity. Okay, we'll keep talking. But you're not going to get away from the religious layer of language. And if Sevilla and Jordan Peterson are right, you're not going to be whole. You're not going to become fully human, Nathan Jacobs' language, until one way or another you figure out that layer of you as a node in the network.